Good morning, my lovelies. How are you today? So, I usually do these videos in the morning, and today's a little bit different. We had a storm come through, and it completely lost electric, lost cable, lost everything. So, I'm just now getting to this, and it's okay, but I don't think the lights will be that big of a problem because it's still kind of dreary and overcast. That's typically why I like to do mornings, is because in the afternoons the light's different and harder to use. So we're going to go back to the makeup while we talk, and today we're talking about the ID channels. Evil Lives Here, Season 2, Episode 7. We're running right through this season, aren't we? But this is called My Brother's Secret, and it was originally aired in February 27th, 2017. Okay, so now let's get going. Yeah, let's get going. I don't think there's any. I had to stop and try to. I don't have any trigger warnings listed. I can't think of any. I mean, they don't go into details of what happened and what's going on, so I don't mention a lot of it. Maybe until the end, and at that point I might say something. But for now, I think we're good. So we're going to jump right in and let's do this video. So I'm thinking I have my mirror in the wrong place. Now, I did like it the other day when I did the video without the makeup, but I just really enjoy doing my makeup, and until I get the next series I'm going to work on with you guys ready, then when I do that I might go straight to doing these videos, but for now we're going to do both. Okay, so in typical fashion of this series, they start the episode talking to somebody and they don't really tell us his name yet, but it does tell us no, actually it does. It tells us his name is Sean because the producers are talking to him, and they ask Sean if he has seen the confession tape. And Sean's like, no, I've seen bits and pieces of it, but I've not seen the full interrogation, confession room, whatever. So production then tells him, we have that here if you'd like to see it. And Sean's like, yeah, I would, I'd like to see it. I've never seen it all. So you see, the production team getting the laptop out and queuing up this video for him. And we actually get to see live video footage, which I've said 100 times. I absolutely love that we actually get to see live footage. But it's a man in a orange jumpsuit, and he is sitting there just talking to, it's two cops and then the guy in the orange jumpsuit, and he's talking and he's telling them about this woman he kills, and the cops ask him, when did you decide you were going to murder her? And you're going to kill this person. And he said his mind was made up as soon as he stopped. So not even when she got in the car, he stopped with the intention of killing somebody, and she was just the unlucky person that got in his car. So he'd been out looking for somebody. And then we find out that in 2003, Sean Lewis, who is going to be our narrator, his brother Patrick, was sentenced to death for his crimes. Okay, so we're already starting this episode out knowing more than usual, because we know the person's name and we know he's killed somebody. We know our narrator's name, and honestly, we're not always fortunate enough to get all these. So I think it's a good start. I mean, in all honesty, it's a pretty darn good start to figuring this out. So then we get more video of Patrick in the interrogation room confessing, basically is what he's doing. And as he's talking, Sean turns the video off and says he can't do it. He says he just cannot watch anymore. It's just disgusting. He can't do it. So, you know, and of course the producer's like, it's hard, isn't it? Well, yes, it's hard. This is his brother. And clearly you'll find out, but clearly he knows what his brother did was wrong. He doesn't support what his brother did or anything of that matter. So, of course, it's wrong. But Sean says, and I quote, when they asked him if it's hard, he's like, he quoted, he said, well, not for me, but for his victims, end quote. Man, I about screwed that completely up. So he also realizes that no matter how hard it is for him to watch, to be, you know, a part of, the people that died are the true, you know, victims. And he said, and it took him a long time to realize that he felt sorry for the wrong person. So for years he felt sorry for Patrick and everything that he'd been going through, and he, you know, you'll find out he was always trying to be a good brother and supportive and whatever. He said, you know, I was doing all this for the wrong person. He said the victims are who really needed, you know, the support and weren't getting it. And I guess that's really kind of the wrong thing to say. It wasn't so much that it was this, he felt bad for his brother, but he realizes it was the victims that he should have been feeling bad for. It's kind of one of those situations where, you know, it's his brother and whatnot, but he realizes that the real problems or the real people that needed whatever were the victims. But of course, I'm going to say he didn't realize there were victims. So that's kind of, he's being really kind of harsh on himself at this point, and that's understandable. I mean, he feels like he should have done more, right? And now we see him, and he's looking at some pictures of him and his brother, of good times with him and his brother. He said, he said he has good memories of him. And he wouldn't throw those memories away because of what his brother did. You know, those were cherished memories from a different time. And honestly, probably a different person. I think his brother was a completely different person. But, you know, Sean's like, this was my older brother. And he was a good older brother for everything Sean could tell when they were young. Now, I don't think Sean would say that. As they got older, he was such a great older brother, but that's here nor there. So he says, Patrick had this thing that even at an early age, if he wanted something, he just took it. There was no consideration. He didn't care who saw him. He didn't care who it was. He just did it. So, he really, in my thought here, probably had no real moral compass. And Sean said he started stealing at an early age because of it. He wanted it. He'd steal it. Now, he doesn't tell us how young Patrick was when he started stealing, but, you know, Sean was quite a bit younger, and I never did figure out that age difference, and I should have, because Patrick really pulled Sean into some of his shenanigans. And I'm sitting here and I'm wondering, well, how was Sean when Patrick was doing that? I should have looked. If I can remember, I will look at the end when we do our Google search. Anyways, so Sean said, you know, Patrick would get all these schemes together, get all these grand ideas, and, you know, Sean said it was hard to tell him no because he made it sound like such a grand plan. You know, it was this wonderful plan they were going to do, and everything was going to be fine, and, you know, you just did what he told you. And Sean said, you know, I did. And a lot of times he'd get Sean in trouble, and one of those times that he talks about where they stole some girls' bikes, and Patrick had this idea they were going to take these bikes, They want to take them home. Then they were going to strip off some parts and repaint it, and they would never know it was the girls' bikes, right? Well, of course, Sean's like, okay, let's go do it. And he did. And the cops showed up, and Sean said he was terrified. But Patrick never showed any emotion. He never thought what he did was wrong. And even though Sean was scared silly, Patrick was very nonchalant about it. So, I mean, in my opinion, this guy had no problem trying to take his brother into bad situations and didn't care if they got caught. So, and it later on it also talks about that as well. But so now we have a second narrator, and this is Linda. So I found this very telling, and this will come into play. But when she comes up and they have who she is, it says, you know, Linda, and I don't remember her last name because I don't remember if it was the same as the others, the boys. But it said Patrick's mom. So I find this funny, or not funny, but I find this very interesting because it's clear when she's talking and then Sean's talking, she is also his mother, but she's only identified as Sean's or Patrick's mom. I noticed this almost immediately, but I am going to say it does kind of talk more about that towards the end of the episode. So we'll find out why she's only being acknowledged as Sean's mom, because I found that very, very telling, you know. But anyways, yes, so now we hear from Linda, and she's telling more stories of, you know, Patrick and how when they went places, before they left, she would always have to check his pockets, you know, get him to empty his pockets, because he would steal whatever he found that he wanted when they were at a friend's house or, you know, having dinner somewhere. And she said she'd always tell him, this is not yours, you cannot continue to steal. But he literally just never listened and did whatever he wanted. So it's really kind of sad that you go somewhere and that's what you have to do. You have to literally check your child's pockets so they don't, he's not stealing stuff as you leave, right? Honestly, I couldn't even imagine, right? I have 2 kids, and I just couldn't imagine if one of them was, I guess, a klepto and always wanted to steal stuff. But, you know, she said everywhere they went, that's what they had to do. So now we're back with Sean, and he's telling us that no matter what punishment Patrick received, he never cared. It never made a difference. He didn't have, what is it he said? He didn't have the mechanicism, that was a mouthful, in his brain that told him right from wrong. Sean says he also didn't have sympathy about what he did and never apologized for anything. So now we're back to Linda, and who's talking about how when Patrick was younger, he was depressed. And she was trying to get him help. She kept taking him to different doctors, trying different medicines, taking him to psychiatrists, and she kept trying. I mean, she tried, right? What else are we supposed to do as parents but try something like that, right? But the doctor eventually told her, said, you save your money. No need to take him because he's not talking to us. He's not telling us what's wrong. We can't help him if he's not going to talk. So she said there was absolutely nothing she could do at that point because she couldn't make him talk, right? I get that. If you won't talk and you won't tell somebody what's wrong and how to make it better, how do you ever get it fixed? So, and it didn't get fixed, obviously. Now Sean is talking, and he is saying that the older Patrick got, the bigger his crimes got, which seriously, I saw that coming, didn't you? I mean, it just makes sense. Plus, hey, we're here, aren't we? We're talking about him, and if he didn't do something horrible, we would never known who he is, which is a harsh way of putting it, but it is. We would never have an idea who he was or why we cared. So, Sean says, looking back now, he realizes that it wasn't the stuff that Patrick was stealing, it was the rush of doing it, which I guess makes sense in a lot of ways, right? He also was often caught. So, I mean, he was really bad at it. And Sean said, and he quoted, and I quote, "I cannot tell you how many times from when he went into juvenile until he was on death row that he was in and out of jail," end quote. Wow. I mean, that's a statement in itself, right? It just is. And literally, he was constantly in trouble from the time he was old enough. And this was also 2017. So I don't know, how long he was on death row before, if he was executed, or whatever. And I'll find that out at the end. But, I mean, oh, dude had some serious problems. That's what it sounds like to me. So, yeah. Okay, where am I at? Sorry. So Sean says he was always just really baffled about how unfazed Sean was about his what he did and the trouble he was in. And, okay, so there's this one time that Sean was accused of stealing from this house and taken into the police department, questioned, and the whole 9 yards. And he said he was terrified. And his brother eventually, he's the one that came and picked him up. And he finds out that his brother is the one that committed the crimes. And he wore, and I've got to wonder how intentional this was, but he wore Sean's shoes to do the crime. And that becomes an issue because the cops kept telling Sean that they had prints of shoes and they were going to, match them to his shoes, and, had them, actually took off the pair that Sean had and made casts of it to match. So apparently Sean didn't have the shoes on that was used in this burglary, robbery, whatever it was. So eventually they dropped the charges. But Sean always wondered, would Patrick ever have admitted to being the one that did this crime, or let him go to jail for it? If it had, if the charges hadn't been dropped, would he have done that? And he said he's just not sure. He's not sure what his brother would have done. So, yeah, he was, that was kind of a harsh reality for Sean. And, yeah, I honestly think his brother was probably going to let him hang out to dry. He did that. I truly think he probably did this crime with the intention of Sean taking the blame. It just kind of makes sense, right? I don't know. We'll never know. So Linda's coming back, and she said that there was often a lot of fights between her and Patrick. And there was many times that she was scared of him. And she recalls this one time they were having this argument after he got in trouble for stealing, and she's, following him in his room. Why are you doing that? You can't do this. This is, you know better. I didn't raise you like this. So on and on and on, right? And she said she could just sit there and watch Patrick as something completely took over, and his expression changed. He picked up a bat that had been laying by his, dresser, and Linda thought this was it. This is when he was going to hit her with the bat, right? So she was scared of him. She just never knew what his temper was going to do and how he was going to react. And yeah, not necessarily a really good way to live in my book, but hey, what do I know? And so this is kind of, I write this down. So I wrote down also the father is only mentioned in passing, right? He's like when Sean's telling stories of him and Patrick growing up, his dad's mentioned, but that's it. He's never in any of the stories. So I write this down and then, oh, look, then the next thing is the father. So it's interesting that I kind of went, where is Dear O Dad? And then the next little segment is about Dear O Dad. So apparently, and we find out that his dad lives in Massachusetts. And we weren't really sure yet. I know now, but at this point, we don't know where Patrick and Sean and them are living. And I did find out later, and I'll go ahead and mention it because I don't think I put it in the notes, that mom and dad were having a long distance relationship. They were married, but dad had a job many states away, right? And eventually it didn't work, which when I tell you where they're living, you'll say, well, no damn wonder it didn't work. But I've actually heard of this. I know people this day and age that do it, but in the 80s, I get it. That's a lot. So anyways, we find out that when Patrick is arrested again, Sean goes to live in Massachusetts with his father. And he's really wanting kind of get a new start, get away from his brother, see what they can do, right? How he can start and get out of that shadow. So he physically moving away from his brother. And, okay, so it's not too bad because at this point, it comes back and it says that Patrick was in jail in Georgia. His father so they lived in Georgia. His father worked in Massachusetts. They were trying to do this back and forth. It wasn't working. They divorced. Dad stayed in Massachusetts. Mom stayed in Georgia. So now Patrick is in jail in Georgia. And Sean is physically moving away. He wants to get as far away from his brother as he can and get away from the... I'm losing my mind. Oh, it's right there. But get away from all the heartache and trouble and headache that his brother has, right? So he wanted his fresh start, and he was moving to this new city and state, and his brother was staying away. And he says that, for a while it worked. But he says, just because you leave something bad doesn't mean something bad stays away. And again, we wouldn't be here if that was the end of it. And Sean moved away and his brother didn't follow him, and all's well that ends well. Not happened. So one day, apparently there was a knock at the door, and it was Sean. Or Sean said it was Patrick. He had found them, his brother and dad, and went up there and wanted to know if he could stay there. So it'd been 3 or 4 years now. He'd been away. And Sean's like, I was glad to see him. I hadn't seen him. I'm hoping he's changed, And so he talks to his dad about it, and they agree that Patrick can stay with them. But there's like all these ground rules. And, no more robbery, no more stealing. You had to stay in line. You had to do, follow the rules. No more getting in trouble with the law. He was done with it, and that was just that. So Patrick agrees, and here I am. Why I can't get these right all of a sudden? But Patrick agrees, and he's like, yes, I'm turning my life around. This is a new start for me. Everything is going to work out. I'm ready, right? So they let him in. And Sean says, for a while, it was great. Patrick got a job, and I forget what it was. It was that, I think he was like a mechanic or something. But he got a job, and he started dating this woman, and Sean's talking about how much in love he is with this woman, and, you know, he was thinking his life's going to be, I don't know why I do this. I can't talk and do it at the same time. But how good his life is going to be, and she becomes pregnant pretty quickly, apparently, in the relationship. And, you know, Patrick says it was the happiest I'd ever seen my brother. But as things are wont to do, they fall apart. And Patrick's girlfriend loses one of the, she was having twins, and she lost one of the twins. And I don't know particularly what happened. It doesn't really say. They just said that they broke up, which you know and I know and just about everybody else knows that the death of a child is typically a very difficult situation. But they broke up, and Patrick wanted to do everything he could to get his girlfriend back. He was devastated, not with just the loss. I mean, so here he had lost a child, but now he had lost the woman he is head over heels in love with, and things are going pretty bad for him. I'm going to go off camera, and I'll be right back. Okay, so Sean said Patrick went from being the happiest he'd ever seen him to the most evilest person he ever knew in a short amount of time. Said that after the breakup with his girlfriend, he went into this really bad depression. And now this story to me, when I'm watching the show and the reenactment comes on, it didn't quite jive for me. And it still just, it doesn't. And we'll find a little bit more about it at the end. But apparently, Patrick was as depressed as he'd ever been. And he had decided that he was going to end his life. So this, I'm going to tell you to you like it was shown to me. And then at the end, we'll talk about what difference it was as far as what happened and what they showed, right? I don't really know why there's a big difference, but anyways, it shows Patrick in an elevator with a rope noose hanging down, and he was going to kill himself by hanging himself in the elevator. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me either. But that's what they showed us. So he was going to hang himself and end his life. So apparently, though, he chickened out. And I hope this foundation is the right color. I'll make it work. But, you know, Sean says something here that's very heartbreaking that anybody with a loved one would say. But Sean says, you know, if he hadn't chickened out, oh, that's not going to be the right color. The world would have been a better place. And that's, wow, that's such the wrong color. We'll see what we can do with it. It's supposed to be lightweight skin tint, so I'm hoping it'll blend in. We're hoping. So, anyway, so, you know, it's a really sad statement that he's making that if his brother hadn't chickened out, the world would be a better place. Now, I can't say I disagree with that, but I am a clown. I am an outsider looking in, and it's so much easier for me to say something like that than me saying it about my brothers or somebody in my family that I love. You know, that's a totally different situation. And yeah, it's really hard to hear someone say that. But, and I know, you know, he struggled with it, because I believe he was like, you know, I know it's wrong. I know it is. But we wouldn't be here today if he had just, you know, killed himself. Anyways, like I said, that's really harsh. But anyways, he didn't. And again, remember, this is a reenactment. It shows I'm trying to decide if I want to put anything on. I think I'm just going to leave it like that for now. It shows a little girl, probably about 5 or 6, getting on the elevator with him. And so she gets on this elevator and by herself, and there's a noose hanging there, and this crazy man, I get it, she's only 5, but still, I don't understand. Again, I don't understand. But apparently Sean says, you know, something clicked in Robert's head, and he decided to attack this little girl. And he tried to strangle her. Thankfully, you know, she got away, she got out, and Sean was arrested for attempted murder with this little girl. And so, yeah, I think there's a little bit, I know there is, because I know where it's at now, what the story is. It doesn't make a lot of sense either way. I don't think anything that Patrick does makes a lot of sense. But anyway, he was arrested. He was taken to jail. And his father and Sean were kicked out of the apartment because of Patrick's actions. So when that happened, you know, Sean's sitting here and he says, and I wish it was true, but he says, you know, this was the final straw. I was done with my brother and didn't want anything to do with him. So he moved back home to Georgia. And he said this was the first time in his life he'd ever hated Patrick. He, you know, he had something going on. He was doing well and had a new place. And Patrick again came and ruined it. So Patrick says that it was a couple years before he saw Patrick again. I'm sorry, Sean said it was a couple years before he saw Patrick. And said that his dad had moved in with his girlfriend and stayed in Massachusetts. And Sean went home. He met a girl. He actually got married. They had kids. And his life was going well. And guess who shows up at his door again? So Sean actually doesn't say where he moved. He just says he moved further south. And that's when he met his wife and had started a family. So I think he had 2 kids. But his wife and kids are not really ever mentioned. And I'm figuring that was probably on purpose. So because of that, I'm not going to talk too much about it. But he does say that when Patrick shows up at his house, he says, I couldn't sense the evil that had been inside my brother. And he thought that he could help him. And I just, I don't know, but I don't know what I would do. I don't know what I do. So, he wanted to help him get his life back together and become a better man. And that's apparently what Patrick kept saying he wanted, right? So Patrick would hang out at the house with Sean, at Sean's house. And they didn't live together. But he would hang out and they would have some beers and they would often spend holidays together. So he was spending holidays with Sean's family, kids, his wife, and whatever. Again, there's not anything really mentioned of the family. So I purposely did not look into that because they do deserve their family or their peace of mind. So I left that be. But Sean tells the story of one night. He doesn't say how long into this changed man that Patrick was supposed to be. Sorry, I just realized something's missing and I don't know why. It doesn't say how long, into this whole change situation, or Patrick's a changed man situation. But Patrick come calling. It's pretty late at night apparently. He showed up at Sean's house very agitated and upset. And he tells Sean the story of that he had just had a fender bender with a woman and he got scared and left. So it was a hit and run. And he didn't want to get caught by the cops because he had a few drinks and he didn't want to go back to jail. So Sean says, I should have made him call the cops, but I didn't. Said that it was just a simple fender bender. Nobody was hurt. I didn't want him to have to go back to jail for a mistake, whatever. So he let it go. He let Patrick go. He let Patrick go because he didn't want him to go back to jail and whatever, okay? We can agree or disagree on what he should have done here. It's too late. But, so after that incident, Sean says that he actually started seeing less and less of Patrick. And then now we're back with Linda. We haven't seen Linda in a little bit. So, Mama, and apparently, I believe, yeah, Patrick is living back with his mom through all this. So, Sean is home, or close enough to home that, Patrick is spending time with him and living with the mom. So, and that's in Georgia, but I think he went a little bit further south from what he was saying, because he specifically said, I went further south. That's about as specific as he could be. Anyways, so Linda is talking about one night they're at the house and the cops showed up and they're there to arrest Patrick. And she's like, what has he done again? Probably some kind of theft, because that's what Patrick always was doing. He was always a thief, right? And she said she really had no idea what was going on. And Patrick kept claiming he had no idea what was going on. And whatever. So, she said she calls down. She isn't serious. I just read my note. I said Mom is in serious denial when it comes to Patrick. And she really is. And we will get there even more so. But she calls to the police station and to see if he's been actually arrested or if he was in for questioning or what. And they said no. It said, he's been arrested. And she's like, well, what is the charges? Blah, blah, blah. And the cops tell her he's been arrested for murder. Now, this is a little different than normal. I will agree. That is what I was looking for. It doesn't, it does bear to say that he went from one extreme to the next. And I don't really know how often something like that happens or why. but he was a thief, and not really a good one, but he was a thief, and that graduated to murder. So I don't know. Is that normal? You would think I would know as much of these as I do and how much true crime I watch. And I watch a lot. But I really don't know if that's a normal transition from petty theft, being a really bad burglar, to murder. It's something I might need to look up. I don't know. But anyways, Mom is just in denial. No, he couldn't have done that. He doesn't have him in it, or doesn't have it in him, or whatever. So Sean talks. He says over the years his mom would call him, and they didn't. So they aren't close, like, at all. But he says that, you know, his mom would call him over the years just to tell him that Sean was in trouble here. Not Sean. That Patrick was in trouble again. That Patrick was in jail again. Whatever. But she said, I'm losing my mind. This time when she called him, it was a completely different call. And he said he had trouble believing it himself. And he said Patrick had been accused of strangling and stabbing a prostitute. And that was just the first body. So Sean said he turned on the news and he was watching that they had found 4 bodies. 2 in Mobile, Alabama, which is further south, so that explains it, and 2 in Atlanta, Georgia. And Patrick was confessing to killing them all. So you can't even continue this denial, Mom. He is telling them, he's actually leading them right to where the bodies are and the murder weapons, and I mean, he is just flat out decided to confess. I got a shadow here that's just bothering me. Anyways, so we see the actual footage again and actual pictures, which, you know, sometimes it's cool, sometimes it's not. But it's actually one of the murder weapons that Patrick had told him where it was at, and where they found it exactly where he told him it would be. And you see his actual confession again, and he's talking about picking up the women that he was going to kill, how he picked them up, and, you know, that kind of thing. And Sean says one of the things that he noticed immediately was all the women looked like his ex. So, oh, dude had some serious issues. Like I said, I mean, he was obsessed with her, and he was obsessed with trying to get her back, and it never worked. But, yeah, oh, dude had some issues. But, you know, Patrick, during this video of his confession, he's so matter of fact. And there's no emotion. And I've said this before a couple times as we watch these, but there really is no emotion at all with this guy. So, like I said, he's so matter of fact. He's nonchalant. He don't care. He's just telling it to this police officer like it's nothing. And, yeah, it was pretty, just watching it, pretty dramatic. Just how cold he was. He even was showing the officer what he did. He demonstrated what he did. He stood up and demonstrated on the cops how he would get behind the and strangle these women. So he was convicted of killing 3 women, and he confessed to 2 more that they never found the bodies for. And he was sentenced to death. So Sean is saying that when he found out he got the death sentence, he was actually very happy. Like, couldn't happen to a better person, you know. But no, he said that it sounds weird. It's actually really bad. But he was getting what he deserves, and the victims deserve justice, right? So he was okay with the judgment. And Sean's now looking at a picture of him, his brother, and his mother. His mother's in between them, and the two brothers on both sides, right? And Sean's talking about how happy his mother was in this picture. And he says his mother was very happy in that picture, but he knows that when this picture was taken, Patrick was already killing people. And to think about him having his arm wrapped around Patrick having his arm wrapped around their mother just upsets Sean to nothing, you know, like nothing else now. That he had his hands that murdered and strangled women were around his mother. Yeah. So, Patrick went to death row, of course. And this is the whole, I need to finish this so I can just finish the story. Here we go. So Patrick went to death row, and Linda moved closer to be to Patrick. And I don't really know exactly where she moved to. They never really said where he went to prison, but she moved down to be with him and stayed and moved away from Sean and his family, including her grandkids. Yeah, that didn't go over real well. Linda was asked if Patrick ever told her why he did it. And she says it wasn't a choice for him. It was an urge that he had felt he had to do. Again, Linda, seriously. Linda did say that he was never remorseful when he talked to her about it and showed no feelings at all. So Linda moving to be closer to Patrick and visiting him so often, I mean like almost daily, I think, drove a huge wedge between her and Sean. Sean couldn't understand why she moved away from him and his kids and chose Patrick instead of Sean. He couldn't understand that, and he kept trying to get her to move back. Come back, come stay with your grandkids, come whatever. But he would never do it, or she would never do it, and it just kept driving that wedge. And he didn't understand. He just could not understand why she chose the serial killer over him and her grandkids. So he said he stayed angry like that for many years, and they barely spoke. And whenever they did speak, it was usually Linda calling him to see if he'd come visit Sean or, you know, whatever, which went over really well, as you can imagine. Sean says, you know, it was awful, but he just couldn't understand why Patrick couldn't go ahead and die so he can have his mother back. Said that Linda had been consumed by Patrick, and he wanted it to be over with, right? He wanted to be able to have her back and she can live her life and so on and so forth, and it wasn't happening as long as Patrick was alive. So eventually got his wish. Patrick Lewis died of cancer before he was ever executed. So and Sean's like, okay, I wanted him to die so I can get my mother back, but I felt really ripped off that he didn't get the punishment he deserved by dying of cancer instead of being executed. And he said he just needed the closure of seeing his brother being executed. And he says, yes, I had planned to be there when he was being executed. And I'm just like, wow, there's a lot of hard feelings in this family. I can't say I don't disagree with him, but there's a lot of hard feelings in this family. So Sean says that even after Patrick died, he and his mom didn't talk often. Said that she Okay, so this tells you how far away she was to be with Patrick. She was 1,100 miles away from where he lived with his family. And she stayed that far away from him and the kids to be with Patrick. And she stayed there after he died. So Sean says he did learn a parent's love for the children because of his mother. He said it was one of the reasons he decided to talk to his mother again after 12 years apart. So in 2016, they reconnected to do this show that was aired in 2017. And there's a scene at the end where both of them are sitting side by side. And the body language is just so telling. Like, he's shying away from her. He's trying to keep his distance. He doesn't, and I could tell she just doesn't know how to act, what to do. It's very telling, and it's very sad, right? But he said when they weren't talking, he had no idea what was going on with his mother. Didn't know if she was okay, didn't know if she was sick, didn't know how she was doing. He never received a picture. He never received anything from her. So he's hoping they could reconnect and become a family again, because she missed out on seeing her grandkids grow up. Excuse me. She said, they were little when I saw them last, and now they were adults. So it ends, the story ends with him saying that he's hoping that they have a lot of time left to reconnect and become a family. And I do too. I hope so. I mean, I know she's older, but I hope they have enough time to reconnect and whatever. And then at the end, it does say that she finally moved to be closer to him and his family. So that's the end of that. But we have to do some research, right? And going into my search engine, I typed in Patrick Lewis's name. And that's a very common name. Very common name. It took me a bit to find out that his actual name is Gerald Patrick Lewis. And then when I did that, I got everything I needed. But it was never mentioned in the show, so I didn't know that. But I did find this article, and I clicked on it first. And it was from monstersandcritics.com. And this is where I learned about Gerald Patrick Lewis and the episode where he's being profiled on Evil Lives Here. So I'm not really sure if I'm, when I click on this, I'm not sure if I'm going to find out anything new, because I just watched the show. But I thought I'd take a look, because it might give me a little bit more detail on a few things than I got when I was actually watching the show. So it tells us that Lewis killed several women over a period of 10 years. Both Georgia and Alabama, which we know because it told us that there was 2 in Mobile, Alabama, and 2 in Atlanta, Georgia. So he killed 4 women. What it did not tell us, the heartbreaking purpose, and probably why Sean hated his brother so much, and he deserves it. One of the women he killed was 8 months pregnant. And it took them 5 years to find her body. So this pregnant woman just disappears, and her family, the dad, they had no idea where she was. Okay, so now I'm on cinemaholic.com, and I seem to use this a lot for my research. I like that channel, or that station, that link. This talks about his victims. And his first victim was an unnamed woman that he picked up, raped, and then killed her. Shortly after that, he was arrested and convicted for the attempted murder of a 5-year-old girl. This is the one that in the apartments, right? So it states that he broke into her apartment and tried to strangle her to death. The show clearly showed him on an elevator. He was going to hang himself, decided not to. She got in the elevator and he chased her. Apparently not. Apparently he tried to kill himself in his apartment. It didn't work. He saw, when he was leaving his apartment after the failed suicide attempt, he saw the 5-year-old, decided to chase, something clicked, he decided he had to kill her, chased her into her apartment and tried to strangle her. Thankfully, it didn't work. He did go to jail for that. Like I said, I thought it was really odd the way they showed it on there, that he was trying to hang himself in an elevator, and then she walked into this elevator, got into the elevator with him, even though there's a noose and, it's crazy man standing there. But apparently he actually broke into her apartment after his failed suicide attempt, which wasn't in an elevator. His next victim was Peggy Lynn Grimes from Georgia. She was 8 months pregnant when she went missing in 1993. She could have been very close to my age. I don't know how she was, but I'm thinking at the time in 93, she could have been very close to my age. It took 5 years to recover and identify Peggy, and the police had no idea that Patrick had killed her until, they had no idea about Patrick until the next victim when he got on their radar. So the next victim was Kathleen Bracken, was murdered in 1998. So this is the 5-year difference. She had been asphyxiated and stabbed to death. There was also proof of sexual abuse and rape. It was reported that Kathleen was a sex worker, and because of this evidence was difficult to sort through, there was reports that someone in a red pickup truck had been seen around her and was hiring her for her services, right? So the red pickup truck, they was the first clue to connect Patrick, I guess. So the friend that saw this was able to give a description of the man, and there you go. The car, the description led back to Patrick. And the police were also able to extract some DNA from a cigarette butt they found in Kathleen's room, which was a match to Patrick's DNA. So when Patrick was arrested, he quickly confessed to Kathleen's murder, even let them know about the other women he murdered. There is a mention of a Misty McEwen, and I don't currently have information on, but he confessed to her and 3 other Georgia women, apart from Peggy, I can't say her name, apart from Peggy, who was also from Georgia. So, yeah, he confessed to some they never found a body or had any evidence on. So Patrick pleaded guilty to an excess of charges, which included malice murder, felony murder, aggravated battery, kidnapping with bodily injury, and feticide. So, really shockingly, there's really not a lot more else about the story and about Patrick Lewis, and I didn't dig into Sean's life. He deserves his peace and his kids and his family. I don't know really how he's doing now, but I didn't see anything, or I might have clicked it anyways, but yeah, that's pretty much everything. It was kind of just, I didn't find a lot. I wish I would have specifically looked at how much of an age difference Gerald Patrick was to Sean. I'm thinking it was probably about 4 years from what I could tell. But that's just by reenactment. Wow. And like I've stated before, you really can't trust those, right? So let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you thought of this episode. It was, I have brothers. I don't know what I would do in his situation. I really don't. I'd like to hear what you think. Make sure you like and share this episode if you enjoyed it. I hope you did. And please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So until next time, be good, be safe. Goodbye.